Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Or welcome if it's your first time. Where the hell you been? This weekend saw playtest number, well, I don't actually know what number it is anymore, and frankly, I don't care, because this playtest has included something myself and the wider community have been preaching for the past couple of years. And that's changes to the weapon handling systems for infantry-based combat. Yes, you heard that right. We have either finally gotten swole or educated, and our soldiers have learnt how to shoulder a weapon, so it no longer flops about like your donga does after you get out the shower and you're doing your best elephant impersonation to your partner. What? Is that just me? We'll edit that bit out. There's a bunch of other things as well, including Middle Eastern Alliance being put in the bin and turned into Iran. And some other crap faction, which is just Canadian bums with guns. Don't care about them. Widespread changes to infantry kits and possible budget cuts, which has seen one heavy AT kit now use a pistol as their primary. What the hell am I even reading? Yes, you heard me correctly. A pistol as a primary. I'm not going to go into absolutely everything, as this isn't a patch notes video. You'd know that because it would have the "It's Wednesday, my dudes" bit at the start. Before we do dive face first, smash that damn subscribe button if you haven't already. We're going full send to hit 35,000 subs before the end of this year, and I'm not about to fall short because you've got commitment issues. If you're watching and you're not subbed, what are you even doing? Hit it now. Don't make me send a logi to your house. Let's get it done! Right, so the first thing I'll briefly cover is the faction changes. As we all know, MEA has been changed now to the Ground Forces of Iran. Something I think we've all seen coming for a long time, but OWI have only now just had the bottle to do it, which I think is brave given the current political climate. And yes, before you ask, I did consider putting a certain Beach Boys cover song in the background of this part of the video, but I decided that'd be a bad idea. Other than the name change, the Iranians now sport their authentic camouflage, which I have to admit, works really well on the new Al-Basra map and Fallujah, and due to similar shades of brown, team killing will be rife amongst the average blueberries if they come up against the likes of the Marines or Canadians. All of their vehicles have been given a fresh coat of sandy-based paint, and they now use the UH-1H helicopter instead of the old Mi-17. And their light infantry battalion gets a bunch of Humvees which were forcefully acquired from the Afghan forces. And I wonder if that there is a hint that the Afghan forces may be added in the future. This faction is pretty likely to be dropping with the 9.0 update when it comes out, as they are fairly polished. It's just a shame the player models still look a bit naff. They're too clean cut for my liking. They need some facial fuzz. Now, I did ask Zeno to give the Iranian SL a golden Desert Eagle for their sidearm and a very, very specific bushy mustache to make them look like a certain someone. Come on, that would be great and you all know it. Moving on to the Canadian weaponized bum faction. This bunch of bums get a plethora of tat to play with. M1 carbines, Lee Enfields, SKS Tazco, yes, Tazco, Glock 17 and 18s, amongst a bunch of other Western 5.56 rifles. Oh, and something called Bangerite. No, this isn't Skrillex's new song. It's basically an improvised explosive that must be shot or damaged to detonate. They do get a couple of vehicles, basic technicals, a Coyote, but most notably, no tank. Now, the one thing I do disagree with in this faction is the fact that they get an airstrike as part of their command assets. Now, this doesn't really fit within the ethos of this faction because, as you can tell, they clearly haven't got much money because the majority of what they have is either civilian-based equipment or really old. It's very much ragtag. So how the hell can they justify the cost of an F-18 or F-16? If it was just like a rocket run from a helicopter, I could possibly buy into that a bit more, but even then, that's still costly. and insurgents and militia still get no such thing. I think the best thing to do would be let them have the drone and let us put the bangerite to it, because that would be funny, seeing all the enemies shooting down the drone when it's in their hab and they basically blow themselves up. Look, I just think that this kind of faction doesn't fit within Squad at all. It's too memey, it's pointless, it's dumb. They're only available on Manicougan and Goose Bay, which are two of the bigger maps in Squad where armor prevalence is very important. I genuinely feel that players choosing this faction in a live game will end up getting absolutely slaughtered, and it won't be fun for anyone. Not to mention the fact that whenever people play insurgents, militia, and PMCs to a degree, they're more commonly used whilst defending an invasion. These are game modes where you have 800 plus tickets to use, so whenever you get dropped, they just instantly give up, because it doesn't matter due to having that high ticket count in the bank. They'd rather get back on the battlefield and get involved again, which makes sense. But this mentality is why these factions rarely work in normal games of Squad, because the infantry treats it like invasion and they give up far too quickly, meaning their infantry losses are statistically much higher than traditional factions where players are happy to wait for a medic. Look, I'm sorry, but this one for me is a very poor addition. And it really takes away from the identity of Squad. It's just cheap, nasty filler content. And not only that, whenever I see their flag, all I can see is Fulham FC's crest. So to me, it'll be Russia versus Fulham. I'm sorry guys, I know you guys spent a bit of time making this, but I'm just calling it as I see it. Right, now I've got all of that rubbish out of the way, ignoring the general poor state of this playtest due to it still being absolutely bug-riddled, vehicles with no brakes, etc, etc. The majority of this build was mainly for the developers to get data to help with the audio bugs. And whilst audio was still a bit buggered, it wasn't as bad as previous builds. My biggest gripe was all the communications keep coming through my left ear, no matter what side I set it to. People's footstep sounds have totally vanished after a couple of games, and if you sidestep long enough, you too go silent. But it is moving in the right direction. I did see improvements, things are getting a bit more reliable, but still got a long way to go. I just hope all the data they got this weekend was beneficial. Server side, different things were getting tried, different servers were running different parameters and configurations from what I could gather, but from playing on a few different servers, you can really feel the difference, and it wasn't good. The first server I loaded into, everything just felt off. It just didn't feel right. Slow, sluggish, laggy, audio was all over the parish. Now my own server, Dead or Dismount, got the green light to go ahead on basically the same settings that we've been using all build from what I could understand, and things felt fine there, with a steady-ish tick rate of between 45 and 64. And I'm not just saying that because it's my own server, it did genuinely feel much more enjoyable, and you could tell because it was the only full server at a certain point in the night and we were told to switch off to help out with the servers. Makes sense because it's testing. Those parameter servers need the data. But when I hopped on the next night, the server I was running on, their tick rate was between 25 and 28, and this was the worst Squad has felt during these playtests. Vehicles were unresponsive, hit reg was dire, and audio was breaking all over the time, including basic communications. It just wasn't fun. My general performance across all three servers took a hit as well. Only way I could get any decent FPS was to set all of my settings to low, use DLSS, and then hard cap my FPS to 60. Now, this didn't eliminate hitching whilst ADSing, but it made it considerably better. Unfortunately, I only discovered this on my second to last game of the weekend, so some of this background footage that you'll be watching may still look shonky, but that was probably the best the optics at least felt for me during the weekend. But now it's time to move on to the most important part of this build, and that is the gunplay changes. OWI state their goals for the changes are to make Recoil feel more natural, less random, and less intense without detracting from our intent to have extended firefights within gameplay. They want to make engagements below 150 meters feel less frustrating and mitigate the problem of losing the front sight post from the front of the weapon moving during recoil. Now they've done this by changing a few things to do with standardizing the recoil offset camera limit and the recoil grip alignment max and other bits and pieces. But what does this all mean? Well, it means gunfights in this game are now far more enjoyable. People with naturally good aim and reflexes aren't being punished into the earth as much. A lot of the randomness has been removed and generally everything feels much more tighter and a lot more natural. Now, Squad has always had very strong recoil for as long as I can remember, and the recoil is still very strong now. I've got no quarrels with that at all. But where these changes have made the biggest impacts, I feel, is for things like follow-up shots on people at range, hip firing, and generally any engagement below 50 meters. There's no longer this massive awkward 30-second waiting period before you can shoot at each other. It's much sharper. Naturally, some weapons handle much nicer than others, and some feel far more polished. But this is something I've been saying since the initial conception of the ICO. This change isn't going to make it into a Call of Duty Twitch shooter where full auto is king. Whoever has their stamina management locked in is still going to win most fights that they get into. And the aim punch still throws your weapon about whilst someone is returning fire, but it is much more manageable. Firefights no longer feel like you're fighting the game and feels more natural. There's less RNG, which is a huge step in the right direction. I've always said since day one of the infantry combat overhaul, before it was even released, that it was all far too punishing for the general player, and that detracts from the game, thus lowering the general overall experience. Now, I caught a lot of hate from a small but loud minority of the player base, but over the past 2 years, I have never once changed my stance on this. Are these changes perfect? No. Is this a really good base settings for things to be fine-tuned individually? Absolutely. And honestly, that's what's needed now. Weapons like the M4, the M16, the AK-74 all perform beautifully. They're smooth, predictable, and they feel more natural and intuitive to use. But there's other weapons out there that are still just no fun to use at all. Anything that's a bullpup is still straight up garbage. It's better than it was, but it's still complete arse. Optics, irons and hollows all feel equally fun to use now. Irons and hollows need their ADS buff speed back because ADS speed is now the same across all three. Again with the inconsistencies, why is an M4, an M16 quicker to ADS than an M27? The main things that need fixing as soon as possible are the stadias or range markers within the optics. The VSS and AS-Val is a prime example of this. They're 100 meters out, and the further you get, the worse they are. If you fire at someone, your rounds land 100 meters short. And not to mention the fact that it's using just general 9mm for damage, so you've got to hit people 4 times to drop them. It's ridiculous. And this isn't the only weapon that has this issue. They all do to a certain extent, and this has a huge negative impact on gunplay within Squad. Pre-ICO, or should I say pre-picture-in-picture optics, this was never an issue. Hell, some weapons are still misaligned, and they have been since the conception of the ICO. Machine guns still have a way to go, but they are getting better. They are on a fine line to balance. They'll either be absolutely useless or overpowered laser beams, so it's a hard one to juggle. But the fact that anti-tank launchers no longer require 30 hours to stabilise will give overconfident and ill-educated armour crews something serious to think about. Look, I get some people won't be enthralled by these changes. Hell, some of you watching will know nothing but Squad post-infantry combat overhaul. So these changes may feel wildly overtuned to you. This is exactly what happened to the players who played Squad for years pre-ICO. Everyone had bought into the game for what it was at that moment. But I honestly feel that this iteration of the ICO, minus a few individual tweaks to weapon-specific handling, maybe tone down some of the aim punch, and the timings of blurring whilst ADSing, the M27 was really bad for that, for example, and other things that can be tuned on the fly. This is what we all hoped the ICO would have been when it was released, and I feel it would have been much more wider accepted. This is the middle ground I have been asking for over 2 years. I had genuinely given up hope that it was ever going to be changed or adjusted, and I just accepted the fact that I was never going to be able to fully enjoy Squad like I once had, due to how tiring and mentally straining it was just simply fighting the game. But this weekend's playtest showed a huge shift in that load. I could concentrate more on playing the game than playing the mechanics. I keep going back to this, but everything did feel more natural and more intuitive. For some people, these changes may be too little too late. But I think the timely release of Battlefield 6 will kindly remind players and the developers that we play these games for fun and enjoyment. And throughout all the crap Battlefield games we've been giving over the past few years, their gunplay has always been consistent, simple, and enjoyable. It's the hook. And I think people doing the Battlefield 6 playtest this coming week and then coming back into squad will suddenly realise just how poor the current gunplay is right now. And speaking of Battlefield, the most recent game mode added to squad, which was the Sumari Skirmish, is a beautiful nod to the old Conquest game mode on Battlefield. All infantry, any cap can be capped at any time, and it was a fantastic new dynamic. It was just a straight up infantry based fight, and I loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing that get developed going forwards. Anyway, I want to know what you guys thought of the playtest over the weekend. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching and for the continued support. Take care and good night.